In your passionate pursuit of all things giallo and horror, when did it occur to you that there were a nice group of films devoted to marriage that would fit a trilogy? And what are the titles and descriptions, briefly, of the three films?
Well, unlike many women, where we are told, we are informed, we are socialized to want a wedding, want to get married, think you go to school to get an MRS degree. Like, none of that ever really made sense to me. And as a divorced person, it really even didn't after I got married. Um,
Interesting.
and uh, you know, over the years, as I've gone deeper into the genre of giallo and most recently French fantastique, and of course my very beloved depressing Soviet sci-fi, the deeper I got into the Eurosleaze in particular, I really realized that marriage and to a lesser or greater extent weddings themselves were a really interesting vehicle to explore all sorts of intimate dynamics, gender dynamics, interpersonal dynamics, what is said between two people, what is unsaid between two people. And of course, the real horror is realizing, I think, that you do not know this person to whom you have pledged eternal devotion, forever and ever. Like, that to me is one of the most terrifying states of realization. It's like the ultimate jump scare. Like, what am I doing? Who is this person? They have my same last name. What the hell is going on?
Right.
So, the three films that sort of bubble to the top of this ongoing realization were number one, The Bride Wore Black by Truffaut. For whatever reason, I seem to be on a bit of a Truffaut kick. I just programmed Fahrenheit 451 recently, which is a very weird film. Interestingly, a very weird film that has an extremely negative take on marriage now that I think about it. And that was released in 66, right after he made that sci-fi film. He kind of like Truffaut, his genius is really showing the conversations between people, the quietness between people, the stillness between people. And in The Bride Wore Black, his camera just soaks up Jean Mireau, her grief, her motivations, which are very linear. And we kind of get to go on this tour of revenge with horror. But not only is it a tour of revenge, it's a tour of revenge in Pierre Cardin costumes. So she looks fabulous. If you're gonna go on, like, a big revenge spree, you might as well look really good. And she does. So there's that. Then the next film is actually a film that I've screened before, but it really has become one of my favorites, and it is Hatchet for the Honeymoon by Mario Bava. Now, Bava is a Giallo master, and he never really crossed over to an English language audience. He didn't really cross over to the UK, he didn't really cross over to the States. And that may really just be a matter of who he was personally. He was very a shy man, kind of a retiring man. He didn't have the spark of a Dario Argento or a Sergio Martino, but he was a workhorse, one of the most prolific gentlemen in that cadre of filmmakers. He did a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but where he really shone was capturing sort of the zany madness of everyday life. He's very into color, he's very into zoom shots. He loves to cast really good looking people who are morally ambiguous, doing terrible things to each other. And, that's really one of my favorite things to watch and talk about. And interestingly, Hatchet for the Honeymoon is about a man, a psychotic man who is really good looking and happens to own a bridal shop. So there's a lot going on. We got mannequins, we got another revenge subplot. Mario Bava really came into his own, I think, in terms of humor with this film. It's very darkly funny. And when and if everyone sees it with me in Chicago, I will warn the audience, you will hear me screaming with laughter a few times. I know the beats are coming. Just come with me. So that's Hatchet for the Honeymoon. And we are wrapping up this triad with a film that, through all of my research, I have only found has been screened once in Chicago, and that was on a late night screening on WGN in 1980. I would have been 6.5 when this screened, and I'm pretty convinced that I saw it, and clearly it ruined me for life in the best possible way. And that film is a Spanish slasher known as The Blood Spattered Bride. And while the title is hilarious, definitely in the Giallo zip code, this film came out in 72, and the director was a member, Arante was a member of what we now call the Barcelona School, which was a group of directors coming out of Franco's Spain. So by the time 70, 71, 72 rolled around, the end of that authoritarian regime was near. And relaxation started happening around censorship, around the art that was coming out. And so The Blood Spattered Bride ostensibly is a retelling of Carmilla, which is a lesbian vampire story, very classic in literature. You know, it really gets into the gender roles, sexual repression, sexual expression. But this film not only is beautiful to look at and has some of the foxiest vampire lesbians ever committed to celluloid. Big fan of foxy vampire lesbians here. It's also a political allegory. And if you watch it with the understanding that the women in the film represent a Spain trying to come out of this authoritarian, very harsh, very sexually repressed, emotionally repressed regime,
Wow.
you understand that even though we're watching what is ostensibly a vampire lesbian story, it's really a story of a country realizing what's happened to it and coming back to itself. In this case, the revenge does involve a dagger and mutilation. So there's that.
Women are always at the centerpiece of marriage as the quote unquote bride, yet often because of circumstances become trapped in a role that never occurred to them during their trip down the aisle. How is this reflected in these films?
Interestingly, the first film is about a bride who really wanted to be married, really wanted to walk down the aisle, and was very much in love with her husband. So, right off the rip, we're kind of talking about an inverted or a deferred analysis of that trope, a woman being a bride. In the next film, interestingly, it's about a man and his relationship to brides. But the way he is built, the way we see him express his florid psychopathy, is all about what a bride should be, who a bride should be. So it's all about the projections, what we affix to the idea of a woman committing herself to one man. And the lead character, John Harrington, is very obsessed with the idea of commitment, and to a lesser or greater extent, the idea of forever. So it's not about a bride per se, it's about a man's relationship to the idea of a bride. The final film is about a bride, and when she realizes that the horrors of marriage are in fact her horror movie, all sorts of crazy shit happens. She does not stand down. She does not stand down. So,
All
yeah,
right.
it's a lot of relationships around the idea of being a bride, in some cases, not being a bride, in some cases, being a groom to a bride.
All right. In your press release, you speak of post World War II Europe, where marriage became less a romantic ideal and more of a volatile arena of power, repression, and revolt. What factors do you believe drove that redefinition, and how did cinema art rise up to reflect it?
That is such a great question. And I think a lot of it has to do with the decade of the 60s in general. So with the understanding that, for example, Italy only became a republic in 1955, which is really not that long ago. And of course, Spain came into its modern iteration in 75, which
Right.
is also not that long ago. So many things were changing about women's lives in particular. I will also point out that in 1960, the pill became commercially available. And while in America, it was a very transactional purchase, Europe had a bit of a different relationship with women's sexual liberation. Europeans in general are not as fixated in film anyway with the idea of somebody to root for, a hero, a heroine. And as women's roles changed in this rapidly shifting topography of post-war Europe, and as women became freer, there was a freedom to being sexually active for the first time. We see this not only in the stories about the women, particularly in these three films, but about how this rapid change really pissed men off. And they did a lot to try to control it, to try to get around it, get in front of it, basically to try to put a leash back on this freedom. But listen, for anyone of any gender, once that genie is out of the bottle, it
Yeah.
is not going back. It's just not possible. So these films capture that volatility, that very rapid evolution of women's choices in particular about their personal lives.
That's very interesting, and it's still going on. It's what's that's so freaky. Um,
Indeed.
what do you think modern society needs to learn about marriage to make it work more efficiently as an institution, or is it continuing its slow spiral death in the digital age?
Unfortunately, I think it's the latter. I just think with with the ability to connect with, I mean, ostensibly millions of people on your phone, with the ability to have secret digital lives, with the ability to, in many cases that we're seeing more and more of, have multiple lives with different families, different genders, different approaches to life altogether.
Yeah.
I just think as beautifully as it has been presented, the and also we are living so much longer,
Yeah.
like only 100 years ago, lifespans were 40% shorter than they are now. So the idea of saying forever to somebody when you're 25 or 27, and then thinking about that 70 years down the 60 or 70 years down the road, which
Oh,
you
10
may
years down the road.
actually still be here. Oh my God, 10 minutes at this point. Just I think the way that society has opened up so much change, so much immediacy,
Yeah.
so many other options, it is it is psychologically, emotionally, and maybe even spiritually impossible to walk through this, this wacky experience called life with one other person.
That's very interesting. Finally, what's your best 1 minute pitch for the film series Till Death Do Us Part, March 20th to 22nd at the Logan Theater in Chicago?
If you want to see three rarely screened films from Europe featuring the most beautiful, morally ambiguous people doing terrible things to each other before, during, and after their marriages, come on down, hang out with me. We're going hard Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and finally, Pat, I don't.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2026.